We've seen Nandan Nilekani in many different avatars over the years. Of course, we know him best still as one of the co-founders of Infosys, a tech guru, an IT guru. Then we've seen him move into the domain and the world of ideas as an author. Then we have seen him take on the Aadhaar scheme, a scheme that the UPA actually said was one of its flagship schemes, but a scheme that has been plagued with very serious questions about its future. And now we see Nandan Nilekani actually seeking a brand new, unique identity for himself, that of a politician, getting ready to contest his first Lok Sabha election from Bangalore South, a seat that for the last 5 elections has been won by the BJP. What made Nandan Nilekani decide to take the plunge, and more particularly, what made him decide to take the plunge with the Congress at a time when the party is beleaguered and could be facing one of its worst ever performances in history? We'll be asking him that on the Buck Stops here today. Remember, you can also send in your questions. We'll be live tweeting through this interview. Use the hashtag AskNandan and we'll be running your questions. We've already got scores of them that we'll be putting to Mr. Nilekani. You're smiling, but this is probably going to be one of the toughest battles and the toughest avatars you have ever sought to take on. Does Infosys and Aadhaar seem like a breeze compared to this big thing you're just about to do, your maiden Lok Sabha election?
Well, both being part of Infosys and Aadhaar had its own set of challenges. But this is definitely a whole new ball game. And I'm really, it's a very steep learning curve because there's no second chance in this election. You have to get it right the first time. So it's definitely, I'm learning a lot. In many ways, I'm completely getting out of my comfort zone, learning how to communicate, how to campaign, and how to deal with people's requirements. But I had a reason for doing it. I felt that if I have to be in this mainstream area, I should win a popular election.
So you never considered the Rajya Sabha route, because there were initial reports that as you entered active politics, you may have preferred the Manmohan Singh route, going through the upper house, do a popular election later.
Well, it did cross my mind, but I felt that let's go back to why I'm doing this in the first place. I think politics is the biggest lever of change in India.
You believe that at a time when everybody hates politicians?
No, I think we can't. I mean, India cannot move forward unless its politics improves, and politics is the lever of change. And to be taken seriously as a politician, I think you need to win a popular mandate. So, ergo, I have to stand for election and I have to take the, whatever comes out of that.
So, in some ways, you're saying that the credibility of being a politician eventually has to come from an election that you have contested and won. Well, the upper house may be the more intelligent house in terms of the levels of debate, but it doesn't necessarily represent the will of the people.
No, I think it's more than that. It's my particular aspiration. I mean, why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I want to be an agent of change. An agent of change means you take on established incumbent methods, practices, people and propose new things. And when you propose new things, then your political legitimacy will be questioned. And that's why I need to win a Lok Sabha election.
Now, here's what you said in 2008. In your book, a book that actually I remember I was part of moderating its launch in Bangalore, Nandan.
Yes.
And you write about, in the opening chapter of the book, you write about how at Infi, a visitor came to meet you and asked you, Nandan, why don't you consider politics? And look at what you say. You said, I told him this is not the United States of America where a Michael Bloomberg could be the CEO of a large company one day and get elected as New York's mayor the next day. Being an entrepreneur automatically made me a very long shot in Indian politics and an easy target for populist rhetoric. I said, quite unelectable. Do you still think of yourself as quite unelectable today?
Well, now I think I'm electable.
You can't afford to say it even if you think so.
But I think I underestimated the pace of change in India. I thought a time would come in India where people like me could stand maybe 10 years from today, maybe 2025. But I think there's been such an astonishing change in what's been happening and the rise of the young India, the rise of people asking for better governance.
It's interesting you should say that, because I would imagine that the change has actually been anti-politics. The change, at least in urban India, has been an acute anger against the conventional politician. In 2008, when you wouldn't even consider politics, and you said, look, I can't be a Bloomberg, right? What changed for you? Was it having an experience in government with the Aadhaar scheme? What's changed?
No, I think one thing I realized is that number one, the biggest lever of change is politics. Number two, as a technocrat, I reached the glass ceiling of change I could initiate.
There was nothing higher, there was nothing more to do.
And it was becoming more and increasingly difficult for me to get change done because everywhere it would finally, the buck would say, okay, so what makes you think that this change, what gives you the legitimacy to propose this change? And I felt, because of the changes in our political system, because of the desire for clean governance, because of the desire for more professionals in politics, the time when people like me could stand arrived much faster than I thought. So I thought this was the right time to take the plunge.
And do you believe you're electable now? Since you once called yourself virtually unelectable.
I not only believe, I am going to win this election.
You think that?
Yes.
You know that questions have been raised about the delay in announcing your name. You have about 5 weeks to get your campaign off the ground. I know you've been campaigning informally in any case. But you are going up against a BJP stalwart. You're not going up against a newbie. You're going up against Anand Kumar, who has won this seat 5 times. The Congress has never won it since the 1980s. And you have 5 weeks to do this.
Sure. I'm still going to win it.
And if you don't? Are you in politics? Is Nandan Nilekani in politics for the long haul?
No, I'm definitely, I see the next phase of my life contributing to political change and reform in India. But I will be winning this election. I think I'm very confident. I've done a lot of work on preparing for this election, though I was not yet declared officially. That happened over the weekend. And I think the mood is right. I think people are looking for a clean, capable, local person, somebody who has a track record of doing things in different fields. And I have certain very unique attributes for this job, because I've been an entrepreneur. I've been a co-founder of Infosys under the leadership of Mr. Narayan Murthy, and we have created lakhs of jobs. I've done the world's largest identity project, given 600 million people or 60 crore people an identity with Aadhaar. I've written a book of ideas, Imagining India. And as 5 years of the Bangalore Agenda Task Force, I've been in the nitty-gritty of urban governance, toilets, roads, solid waste management, accounting reforms. So I bring really a whole array of things to the table. I think people want performers today in politics. People want problem solvers.
Are you saying
today.
Anand Kumar is not a performer?
I'm just saying that I bring this track record to the game, and I think people in Bangalore want a change. They want a fresh face. They want somebody who will be an ambassador for them. They want somebody whom they can look up to. And I think there's a very positive response.
Were you hurt when your old friend from Infosys, Mohandas Pai, questioned whether you had spent enough time doing things for Bangalore? He said, look, Nandan's a great guy. I hope he becomes Prime Minister one day. But he hasn't done enough for the local issues of Bangalore. Do you take that criticism on the chin?
No, not at all. I think Mohan is a good friend, and,
So were you surprised he made that criticism?
Well, I think, Mohan is welcome to say what he says. But I have done a lot for Bengaluru. When I did the BATF, I spent 9 crores of my own money on providing the infrastructure for the BATF, and we got so many things done in terms of toilets, waste management, and I worked with the BDA commissioner, and he built the road, and I used to go on weekends to examine the road. So I really got nitty-gritty.
So why do you think Mohandas Pai said this?
You should ask him.
Why do you think so? You know him better than I do.
No, I think you should ask him.
Were you upset? Did you pick up the phone and say, Mohan, why did you say this about me?
He's a good friend, and when we meet, we have a great conversation.
Now, you mentioned Mr. Narayan Murthy. When Murthy went back to Infosys, after troubles, the reins of Infosys kind of returned where they were. Reports suggested that he asked you to come back for a second innings as well. Did you consider that at all? And did you consider it seriously? And when you decided against it, why did you decide against it?
Well, Mr. Murthy has been a mentor for me all throughout my career. When I got my first job when I came out of IIT with him, so I see him as
you said if you hadn't met Murthy, you would have probably been on the long train from New Jersey to Manhattan,
or maybe Santa Cruz to Churchill or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think I owe a lot to him, and my whole professional career was under his leadership. But I think in the last few months, especially after I was looking at my career and my involvement in politics, that was the way I saw my life going forward.
Why the Congress? And a number of questions that are coming in on Twitter, and I'm going to start taking them, have asked this. Why the Congress? Yes, we understand your association, of course, with the UPA's Aadhaar Unique Identity Program, and I want to talk a little bit more about that later.
Sure.
But for Nandan Nilekani, you could have come in, let's say, on the Aam Aadmi Party. You have another friend, Mr. Balakrishnan, who's contesting from Bangalore Central on the Aam Aadmi Party ticket. It seems to be very much the flavor of the season in urban India. If it's not Mr. Kejriwal, it's Mr. Modi. Urban India particularly is at the moment fuming with the Congress. Why would you join a party where the public mood is against that party?
Well, first of all, I think the Congress party is my ideological home.
Was that always the case?
Yes, because I was born in a Nehruvian family. My father was an ardent Nehruvian, so I was brought up with the secular liberal values that the Congress has espoused. And I believe in India for everybody. I believe in the idea of India the way Sunil Khilani talks about it. And I believe that everyone in this country must be given a fair deal, treated equally. So my values are, ideologically, I'm very close to the Congress, and I can't imagine being any part of any other party which doesn't have those values.
But when you made the decision, didn't you think for a moment, what am I doing? Am I on a suicide mission here?
No.
Look at how angry people are with the Congress at the moment. Look at how the Congress government is perceived to be corrupt. You've often called Aadhaar one of the ways to counter corruption. You said you were using technology to counter corruption.
Absolutely.
But it's done nothing to the big ticket corruption scams that have plagued the UPA through its 2 terms.
Well, I think, as I said, I don't decide my politics based on the flavor of the month. I decide based on where is my ideological home. And equally importantly, it's the Congress party and the UPA government which gave me the mandate to do the Aadhaar project and backed me to the hilt for the last 5 years. And today, the fact that we have reached 60 crore Aadhaars is because of the political support I got from them. So I think they have been very, very fair to me. They have trusted me. They've given me a free hand to build the world's largest.
Have you been disappointed before you joined them with the kind of performance that UPA 2 has delivered?
I think I can say that the Congress party has been very good to me. I'm very grateful that they've given me the ticket, and I'm with them, and it's the ideology I believe in. I've become an official member as of yesterday. And I'm very happy with my decision.
You know, you said that it's a secular liberal alternative and the only ideological home you've ever known. As part of the images released in your public meetings, there was one that went pretty viral online with you wearing a skull cap. And you had other ideological camps, right of center, saying, oh, this is Nandan Nilekani practicing the Congress's version of secularism. The criticism being that today, it's these kind of symbolic gestures that have come to occupy the debate around secularism, whereas it has become one of the most abused words. You take a party like the Samajwadi Party, once regarded as secular, and on its watch the Muzaffarnagar riots happen. So Nandan, is secularism still a slogan that has relevance in these elections?
Well, I come from the fundamental belief that India's diversity is its strength, that India is this fantastic, phenomenal sort of mix of people of different castes, religions, backgrounds.
Yeah.
And the only way that this country is going to move forward is by giving everybody a space in that.
But what was that moment wearing the skull cap for you? I ask because it's so heated in our politics today. Did Mr. Modi do the right thing by refusing to wear one? Did Akhilesh Yadav's wearing a skull cap take away from what happened in Muzaffarnagar?
No, I think it's a matter of courtesy. When I went to visit the mosque and they asked me to put on the skull cap, it was a courtesy that I put it on, and I put on other things. I put on Karnataka, the top, the headgear. So it's natural that when you go somewhere, you put on the headgear of that region.
Should politician secularism be measured by this? Do you think that Mr. Modi, in refusing to wear a skull cap, do you think that was a serious point of discussion? Because the BJP people turn around and say this is a meaningless reductionism of secularism.
Well, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I think I'm coming from a belief that every Indian deserves a fair chance. Every Indian should be treated with equal respect, and every religion, caste, creed should be treated equally. So I think these are all, I think we shouldn't get diverted by all these things. And I think ideologically, I agree with the Congress. That's why I'm part of it. Okay,
I'm going to start taking questions from Twitter. Remember, you can send your questions for Nandan Nilekani. We're going live with the hashtag #AskNandan. And the first question coming in is from Soumya Rao. Soumya Rao is saying, Mr. Nilekani, what is your stand on campaign finance reform in India? This is a really important question, Nandan, because you have the money. You're estimated to be worth $1.3 to $1.4 billion. Most people who are outsiders like you otherwise are, they can't get into politics because they don't have the money to actually contest elections. You even have friends like Kiran Shaw symbolically pledging an amount of money to your campaign. Are you going to be running your campaign with your personal wealth?
Well, yes, I'm going to be. I'm spending my own money on this. But I think I agree with her. I think when I look at what are the issues plaguing Indian politics, I think there are 3 or 4, and they're all getting addressed in different ways.
Yeah.
The first is inner party democracy, which I think certainly the Congress party, they're very keen to bring in more inner party democracy. The second is selecting candidates through a primary process. Again, the Congress party has started that, and they've been having about 10 or 15 primaries, including one that happened in Bangalore yesterday. So, and the third is election funding. So, certainly I see my role as a politician to be involved with these reforms. And
do you believe the state should finance elections ideally to create a level playing field, or do you think that's not a realistic
I think
answer?
We have to look at that carefully, because state providing financing may not necessarily mean that people won't spend more money. So finally, it's about getting. It's finally about making sure that every rupee spent is a legit tax-paid rupee, and having much, having disclosure and so forth. I think, and I'm actually doing studies of how campaign financing reforms happened in the US and so forth. So I think that's very much a matter, and I would agree with Soumya that that's an area we need to do.
But Arvind Kejriwal's party says that we disclose every donor on our website, and the two big parties actually, if I'm not wrong, I think more than 70% of their donations are undisclosed. Would you say that one of the key reforms needed, and somebody like you may not need to disclose your donors because you have your own money, but there are conflicts of interest, especially when business people join politics. Did you ever consider that? Did you ever consider that?
Well, I've been very careful in the sense, when I moved from Infosys to government, I severed all my ties with Infosys because I didn't want any...
Because there could be a potential conflict of interest.
I said, no, that part of my life is over, and now I'm in government, I have to treat everyone equally. So I got off the board, I did all that. And similarly, even now I'm very careful about, mixing business with politics. But I would agree. I think I see this as one of the areas where I would pay attention to, campaign reform.
You mentioned
generally
election reform,
election funding reform, and political funding reform. Yes.
Now you mentioned primaries and you mentioned inner party democracy. One of the strongest criticisms against the Congress is that Rahul Gandhi says he wants to change the system, but he is the system. That Rahul Gandhi wants to introduce primaries, but the top job of this party is technically reserved, that there is a Gandhi or a Nehru who is always the Congress president, and if they so decide, then there will be a prime minister. So Manmohan Singh is actually Sonia Gandhi's choice. Do you not, as a contemporary, modern, educated politician, find the dynastic principles that guide your party, because the Congress now is your party, somewhat disgusting?
No, I think Rahul Gandhi is committed to reform. I think sometimes being in that position actually gives you the maximum leverage to reform an organization. And I see my role as being part of his team in making that reform happen.
Would you like to see him maybe stepping aside and somebody else being open for the top job of the party? Because it's a very ambiguous position that Mr. Gandhi has taken on this.
Digressing. I think the question is, how do we improve inner party democracy in all our political parties? How do we bring in a process of primaries so that candidates are selected through an electoral process? How do we improve campaign funding? These are the things that we have to worry about. And I think as long as we move our political system towards these kind of reforms, that's really the issue which I'd like to focus on.
Now, your seat was obviously not chosen for the primaries. Are you worried that the old guard in the Congress will not cooperate fully with you? That knives are out for Nandan Nilekani? He's been called an interloper. He's been called an outsider, someone who parachuted into this cozy world of old politics.
Well, I've been, in the last few weeks, I've been meeting all the people in the Congress party in Bengaluru. I've been meeting all of course, the KPCC president and his colleagues. I've been meeting all the MLAs. I've been meeting all the block presidents. I've been meeting all the cooperators. So I'm getting a very, very positive response from all of them.
You're not worried?
I'm not worried. I think I'll get total support. Yesterday, I had a big event where I joined the party. They were all there in full strength. They gave me their complete support. I'm very confident that I'll get the support.
Before I take the next Twitter question, what worries you about this election? Because it is a different ball game, as you said. You can't be all fully 100% confident that you're going to win. There must be some challenges that you see in this campaign.
No. Obviously, in the next few weeks, one has to focus relentlessly on execution. Just think about the challenge of an election of this type. It's a Lok Sabha seat with 18 lakh voters, 1.8 million voters, sprawling constituencies spread across 8 assembly constituencies, 61 wards of the BBMP. And you can't reach every voter. So you have to have a very clear strategy on reaching out to voters. How do you reach them through media? How do you reach them face to face? How do you do...
Are you approaching it like an engineering project?
Yeah, actually.
And is that risky? Is that risky? Because
yeah, obviously, my approach may look more corporate and technocratic, and some people may say, this guy doesn't have the instinct and he's doing it in a very corporate way. But that's me, and that's the way I'm built. So yes, I will do it very systematically, and so it's not easy to do an election. And my respect for politicians only gone up after seeing what they go through, because these days, I've done road shows in business, right? When you do an IPO in like Infosys, we would go on 3 weeks of road shows. So you would go across the world and meet investors. This is actually more tiring than that, because that was 3 weeks with weekends off. So you actually do only Monday to Friday. Here, you're doing about 5-6 weeks with not a day off.
So is this the toughest thing you've ever done?
I think in terms of physical and emotional strain, yes.
And do you
in a concentrated way.
And do you have the thick skin it takes to be in politics? Because suddenly you will be, you've had a dream run with the media, for example. You've had a dream run in terms of your public image. Yes, there were controversies with Aadhaar, which we'll get to. But you're now a politician, and politicians are treated with a lot of derision and contempt in this country, for good or for bad.
Sure.
Are you ready to have that kind of thick skin?
Actually, in some sense, if I tried to do a transition from Infosys to standing for election, I would have found it extremely difficult. But these 5 years as the head of Aadhaar, public space, and being vilified on all fronts by people of different ideological persuasions has, I think, strengthened me. So now I'm not bothered.
Okay, next question is in fact on Aadhaar. It is from Godwin Paul. Godwin is asking, sir, what is the future of the UID and the Aadhaar project? Who will look after it now that you've joined politics full time, and what will happen to it? Now, this is a really important question, Nandan, because the UID has actually not got statutory backing from Parliament. The last session of Parliament has come and gone. You have Yashwant Sinha, who actually heads the Parliamentary Standing Committee, who's questioned whether Indians need an Aadhaar card at all. So Aadhaar has been functioning under an executive order. Are you concerned that this little baby that you think is yours actually may not live to even get into his teens by the time the next government comes, which looks like will not be a Congress government?
First of all, it's not a baby. It's a 600 million user gorilla. Right? Because there are 600 million people who have Aadhaar now. This is the world's largest ID system.
Yeah.
And it's being used in every application. And I think it's being used for, it's the world's largest cash transfer system. It's being used for subsidy reform. It's being used for financial inclusion. It's being used to make India a cashless society. So I think it's a very, very stable thing. And I'm very confident that no matter what political formation comes to power in the next election, Aadhaar will continue.
You're saying Aadhaar will survive, it's irreversible.
It's irreversible, it's sustainable.
So why hasn't Parliament been able to endorse it all these years?
No, I think the government is very clear and that this can be done as an executive order. The law is really to create a regulator for Aadhaar. It's like SEBI. SEBI was set up many years before the law was passed. Similarly, the PFRDA was set up, 10 years before 7, 8 years before the law was passed. So government often creates a body and starts its operations and then creates a regulatory framework. So this is the same thing.
You're not disappointed that as you demit as the chairman of this project, you could not get its stamp of approval in Parliament? There must be some disappointment.
Aadhaar is completely valid as an executive order.
No, I know that.
It's only the regulatory.
I know that, but in terms of this regulatory body and the fact that that a BJP leader as senior as Yashwant Sinha has questioned the need for Aadhaar at all, that the Supreme Court has said that it's not mandatory to have one. Does all of this concern you?
Supreme Court has only said in an interim
that don't
order
link to
that
government
don't
schemes.
deny a service for like
Yes.
Aadhaar. That's all that they
Yes.
said. So no, I think Aadhaar is here to stay. When you have 60 crore people with Aadhaar, there are people on the ground who are using it, and the people appreciate it. Millions of people who don't have an ID for the first time in their life.
So it's here to stay. It's not reversible.
Oh, absolutely.
The next question is actually also on Aadhaar. It's coming in from Vijay Iyer. Vijay Iyer is asking, Nandan Nilekani, how would you honestly rate the UID program? My wife and son applied 2 years ago. We yet to get an Aadhaar card despite several complaints. This has happened to a lot of people. There's also been controversy over whether, who all should get it? Should it go to all residents? Should it only go to citizens? How would you, if you had to score a report card on the Aadhaar program, how many marks would you give it?
I would give it 7.5 to 8 on 10.
That's a pretty generous score.
Sure, it is. Look, where in the world have 600 million or 60 crore people got an identity in 4.5 years? It is the fastest growing ID, system. For example, you look at WhatsApp. WhatsApp in the news sold for $19 million to Facebook. WhatsApp has 450 million users in 5 years. Aadhaar has 600 million people enrolled in 4.5 years. So in that sense, it's a phenomenal achievement to get so many people on board. We have done thousands and thousands of crores of cash transfers using Aadhaar. Aadhaar is used as a KYC to open bank accounts. Aadhaar is used as online authentication for a person in a village to withdraw money from his bank account. This is serious reform. Certainly, yes, there have been some delays sometimes in delivering the letter, because this scale of project nobody has done.
What was most frustrating for you trying to get this project off the ground? Would you be candid enough to admit that it was perhaps your first experience with how red tape, different interests, competing interests within government can actually stall a project? Because frankly, the assessment is that Aadhaar was delayed and stalled because of a sabotage within, that you had enough detractors for this project within. Nandan, because I know you to be a candid person, would you be candid enough to concede that that was what was most frustrating for you or difficult for you to get consensus within?
No. Any change in any society, within the government, outside the government, is bound to have opposition. That's the nature of change. So whatever challenges I encountered, I did not feel frustrated. At no point in the last 5 years I felt even an iota of...
What about your differences with Mr. Chidambaram? What about the fact that the National Population Register was seen to be a competing program? These were letters that made their way into the public domain. These were differences that were well known.
These are all professional differences, and Mr. Chidambaram is actually one of our biggest supporters. If you saw his last budget speech, he spoke eloquently about why we need Aadhaar, and he's been a great supporter of mine.
So these differences that crept up, that stalled the project, do you think they were bureaucratic delays? Do you think there were resistance to change? What was it? How would you classify it?
See, in any system of government, there's something called the rules of business. Every ministry, every department has the rules of business that basically decides what is its remit, what is its mandate. And sometimes when you're doing something new, somebody may feel that this sort of infringes on their rules of business, and therefore it becomes an issue. This is natural stuff. This happens everywhere. It happens in the US, happens in Britain, happens in India. So there's nothing that has happened which I feel particularly perturbed about. I think, and I've always enjoyed doing this project, and it has also prepared me for the political life.
But there I'm sensing that it helped you prepare for political life because you actually encountered for the first time that a great idea is not, if you think Aadhaar is one, is not enough in itself to get it off the ground. You need to build political consensus.
Correct.
You need to deal with the babus. You need to be able to deal with the red tape.
Yes.
So was that difficult?
No, it was not difficult. Just new. I had to learn some new skills.
I mean, Infosys hadn't taught you that, certainly.
Yeah. So clearly, for me, that's what I said. The Aadhaar experience was a logical step in my migrating to this political world. I could not have done the leap from Infosys to political world. It would have been too big a leap. But Aadhaar sort of prepared me for the issues, and it also made me decide to go into politics because I realized that what is my goal? My goal is, I believe that India is a hyper aspirational society. I think every day I meet people who, I met a lady the other day who works in 3 domestic houses as a help, and she's sending her child to an English medium school, and the child wants to be a doctor. And this is happening at scale, right? Half a billion young people all wanting to be doctors and engineers and scientists. And our systems are not able to cope with this. So we need to really do some dramatic systemic changes. And I believe I can make those changes happen. But to make those changes happen, I'll have to deal with a lot of opposition, and the only way for me to make those changes happen is if I have political legitimacy.
But the opposition will sometimes be within, which is what happened to Aadhaar.
It doesn't matter. But the reason I believe of all the changes, the biggest lever of change is politics, and that's why I'm standing for election. That's why I'm standing for a Lok Sabha election, because I want to win a vote. When I say that some reform has to be done, people will take me seriously.
Okay, one last question on Aadhaar. You mentioned direct cash benefits. The fact is that at the moment the government has actually put connecting Aadhaar to fuel subsidies in abeyance. Now this was meant to be this flagship thing that was going to be rolled out before the elections, but the government developed cold feet. Does this disappoint you?
No, I think it's a temporary, they're taking a look at the direct benefit transfer but all the others are going on. I mean, for example, it's being used in Narega, it's being used in pensions, being used in scholarships, so it continues.
But does it disappoint you that,
not at all.
The gas subsidies are not being linked to
Any reform
Aadhaar?
process, certainly of the scale that we're trying to do, is going to have some perturbations.
Okay, the next question coming in is actually on education, and the question on Twitter is, Nandan Nilekani, do you think the Indian education system is too IIT and IIM centric? And in the list of the top 200 best universities, Indian universities have not figured. Now IIT was obviously the great centerpiece of your personal evolution, but this is an interesting question that the best schools are still regarded as the IITs and IIMs, and those who can't get in and have the money or the wherewithal to do so will probably look to go outside India now.
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of work to be done on education. This particular question is about higher education.
Yes.
So clearly, when we see so many young Indians going abroad to study, it means that we haven't created enough educational facilities either in the public or the private sector. And that's definitely an area. In fact, that's one of my passion areas for reform, which I would like to participate in. I've been involved, for example, trying to set up a university, a private university called the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, for which I've given a fairly substantial endowment. And we have not been able to get it off the ground because it's so difficult to start a university. So I think definitely allowing the growth of many more universities, both in the public and in the private sector, is a very critical requirement, and I'm all for reforming that whole area.
What is it about IITian politicians? There's you, there's Arvind Kejriwal, there's Jairam Ramesh, and there's Manohar Parrikar. Yeah. I'm sure there's some I'm missing.
Yeah,
so Sudhindra Kulkarni. So what is it about IITian politics? And Ajit Singh. So there has to be something there.
No, I think just that, the IIT graduates came of age now, in some sense. I mean, like, you take the IAS.
Yeah.
The IAS started getting IITians in a big way in the late 1970s. So today, there are a lot more secretaries to the government of India from IIT. The previous governor, Dr. Subbarao, was from IIT. The current governor, Raghu Ram Rajan, is from IIT. So suddenly you're seing these people. So just that,
late bloomers?
It's just no longer the Stephens monopoly.
All right, let's take the next question. Next question on Twitter. Remember, you can send your questions for Nandan Nilekani using the hashtag AskNandan. Abhijit Das. Abhijit Das says, my question for Nandan Nilekani, why the Congress? Why not the Aam Aadmi Party like his Infosys colleague, Mr. Balakrishnan? What do you think of Arvind Kejriwal, Nandan Nilekani? The Congress sounds very confused. The BJP says actually the Aam Aadmi Party is the Congress's B team. It's your party supported Mr. Kejriwal in Delhi, yet you all seem at loggerheads. Are these loggerheads an act where Arvind Kejriwal now essentially seems to be doing the Congress's work when it comes to countering Narendra Modi? What does Arvind Kejriwal represent to you personally?
I think Arvind's contribution in political change, I think, is immense. I think a lot of the techniques that the Aam Aadmi Party has brought in, which is bringing in funding through donations and putting it out on the website, doing door-to-door campaigning. I think it's done some very, very positive innovations in politics, and hats off to him and his team for doing that. So I respect their contribution there. But clearly, governance is not his cup of tea. I mean, it's not about governance, because I think when you come from an agitational DNA, to suddenly become a governance guy is a very different game. I mean, for me, I'm a governance guy. I'm not I can't do an agitation. I can't be a street guy. But I can.
You've never sat on a dharna?
Well, maybe in my IIT days or something. But I know that fixing a problem, it takes years of effort. You have to be in the trenches. You have to avoid the TV cameras. You have to negotiate with people on the ground. You have to, make compromises. So the agitational sort of DNA is very different from the governance DNA. So I just think that they my sense is, based on what happened in Delhi, they don't really have that thing. But as a force of change, bringing new thinking into politics, I think they've done a great job.
How do you read his training his guns on some of India's biggest business names, whether it's Mukesh Ambani, whether it's Gautam Adani? He says he's not anti-corporate, he's anti-crony capitalism. And I want you to come in here and also speak a little bit about what you think is the appropriate place for wealth display in a country as in a sense, non-egalitarian as India. In a New Yorker profile in 2011, you said that you basically didn't like to stand out too much from the crowd. You said if the crowd all had personal planes, maybe you'd have one too. You said you were too lazy to run a huge house or establishment like Mr. Ambani does. So what does wealth mean to you and your family, and what do you believe is appropriate wealth display?
Well, first of all, I think if you allow entrepreneurship in a country, then some people are going to get wealthy.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
One, we should make sure that wealth is earned through legal and ethical means, and that wealth is not earned through crony capitalism. That I would agree with everyone, that we really need to have a very competitive way of creating wealth. And certainly at Infosys, it was always that kind of wealth. But at the same time, I think in a country with as much disparity as India is, we should be tempered in our display of wealth, and we should be generous with our wealth. So that philosophy, my family, and in fact all the Infosys founders have adopted, which is they all live very simple lives, and they give away large chunks of the money. And that's the way that I think we make this wealth creation acceptable.
But when you said that if the crowd had planes, maybe I'd have one too. What did you mean?
I was, this guy
was being jocular.
He was interviewing me, non-stop. How the New Yorker does interviews. Yeah. So I must have said something.
But personally, you're uncomfortable with ostentatiousness.
Yeah, I mean, I travel. I pay my own fare up and down to Bangalore, because when I worked in Delhi, I don't take salary from the government. My wife and I do a large amount of philanthropy. So our mindset is not oriented to me, money is freedom. Money gives me the freedom to take a government job and not worry about any inducements. Money gives me the freedom to get into politics and not be obligated to anyone. So to me, money is about freedom. It's not about display.
So when Mr. Kejriwal raises these questions about the Ambanis, about the Adanis, and he wants the Congress and the BJP to come clean on who finances their campaigns, who pays for their election jets, do you believe that Kejriwal is raising questions that actually the parties should take seriously in answering?
No, I think we definitely should promote a market economy where people compete on a level playing field, where government rules are well laid out, where there's no special favors done to any businessman, and businessmen win on market and competition innovation and not on their links to the government.
Would you call yourself a free marketer?
I would call myself as someone who believes in a market economy. Let's put it this way. I see let me phrase the problem differently. I think India is the largest young country in the world. Half our population is below the age of 25. These people are hyper aspirational. If we don't provide an outlet for the aspirations, we're going to have a huge backlash on our hands. Those aspirations include having good jobs. To have good jobs, you need entrepreneurs who create jobs. These jobs are not going to be created only by government. And therefore, we need to have entrepreneurs. If you have to have entrepreneurs, they're going to get rich. So those things are a given. Now the question is, how do we make sure they don't get rich the wrong way, and that when they do get rich, they use their wealth well?
Now, it's so interesting that you use this phrase hyper-aspirational, because in many ways, Narendra Modi would argue that it is his campaign that is focused on aspirations, and the Congress has remained a campaign that is centered on a kind of welfareism. That all of the Congress's centerpiece schemes are actually these welfare schemes, whether it's food security, whether it's the rural employment guarantee scheme, whether it's the land acquisition programs, whether it's Aadhaar. Do you believe that the Congress is not in sync with aspirational India?
No, I think there are two strands here. One is, I think we still have a large number of people who need that leg up, and they're talking about crores of people, and that's where I think entitlements, rights, all that have a very, very important role. And Aadhaar has provided some of that by allowing direct benefit transfer and so forth. And as they get the basic things in their life, we also need to create aspiration ladders for them. So I think you need both. I don't think it's or situation.
Okay, next question coming in on Twitter is from Ritesh Arora. Ritesh Arora is saying, will Nandan Nilekani like to take orders or work under someone as inexperienced and as criticized these days as Rahul Gandhi? This is a really important question because, you've co-founded Infosys, you've run Aadhaar. People are looking at Rahul Gandhi and saying he has not even spent time in government. What has Rahul Gandhi done that he should be Nandan Nilekani's boss?
No, I think Rahul Gandhi, I find him very idealistic. I find him committed to change. I think he wants to reform the system. But you don't think he is the system himself? In many ways, he represents all that he seeks to change. No, I think he has a real deep desire to change the system. He wants to open it up. He wants to turn it upside down. He wants to allow new people to get into politics. So I think in that sense, I agree with that, and I would like to be part of that change. That's why I'm entering this game.
But would you have wanted to see Mr. Gandhi spend some time in government getting trained just like you did?
No, I think that's his personal choice. All I can say is that I think he has the right heart, he has the right goals.
Is he experienced enough to be your boss?
Yeah, I look, in politics, if he's the boss, he's the boss.
Okay, next question. In fact, two of them on the same theme, so I'm going to take them together. Anand Valunjkar is writing on Twitter, would you be to Rahul as Manmohan is to Sonia if made the Prime Minister in case UPA wins? And Kavita Reddy also has the same question. Does Nandan Nilekani aspire to be the Prime Minister of India? Now, you remember there was a time, even before your candidature was announced, and the media was filled with these stories, that Nandan Nilekani would be this perfect next Manmohan Singh. He's a technocrat. He doesn't have the baggage of Manmohan Singh. He doesn't have the old age of Manmohan Singh. He doesn't have any scams. He's relatively non-controversial. The Gandhis like him. Is Nandan Nilekani possibly, in the future, the next Manmohan Singh to Rahul Gandhi?
Such speculation is injurious to my health.
Because the knives are out in the Congress party,
so
right?
I would say that I have a very limited focus. I have 6 weeks, an election to win. That's all I'm thinking about.
But you don't accept that there is some kernel of truth to the fact that given that the Congress was able to throw up a technocrat as Manmohan Singh as possible Prime Minister, something like this could happen in your life one day.
I don't think so. I'm really focused. I just want to be there as part of a team. I've always been a team player. When I was in Infosys, I was a team player. I worked under the leadership of Mr. Murthy for many years. I did my job. In Aadhaar, I was a team player. I'm always a team player. I'll be a team player in politics.
You said one of the reasons you got into politics, or you in a sense shifted your focus from Infosys to Aadhaar and now to politics, is because you'd reached a glass ceiling. What are your ambitions for yourself in politics?
I'll tell you where I come from.
Yeah.
I am a beneficiary of India's growth and success. I got a good education because my parents sacrificed to make sure I got the right education. I was able to pay 200 rupees a month fees at IIT because Jawaharlal Nehru felt the need that India should have IITs. Otherwise, I would not have got that education. Because of the fact I met people like Murthy and my other colleagues, I was able to create Infosys. And the economic reforms of 91 made Infosys into a multi-billion dollar company. So I have benefited hugely from this country. And I really don't have any more personal needs. I don't need to make money or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel the rest of my working life, if I can make a difference to the lives of millions of Indians, I've done my bit. That's all I'm really interested in. And the reason for politics is that, to me, is the biggest lever that is there to make the lives of millions of Indians better. To me, Aadhaar was one of that. When 60 crore Indians get an Aadhaar, to me, that we are giving them some kind of a way for them to improve their lives. So to me, it's all about change at scale, and I would like to be part of that change, make that change happen.
So the next Twitter question coming in live, I've been told for you, is will you stay in politics even if you lose?
I'm not going to lose.
And if you do? And if you do?
No, let me phrase it differently.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm investing my time into politics, and I intend to play this for the long haul.
Yeah.
That is correct. And whatever capacity it is to bring change and reform into the system.
And were you to not win your first Lok Sabha election, many people don't, will you fight another election?
This is, speculative stuff. In any case, this is all, hypothetical because I'm going to win this election.
All right, you're confident. From Bangalore, actually, we have a question which relates to Bangalore. This is a local resident, Uday Vijayan, asking, after the Carlton Towers fire, is Nandan Nilekani going to focus on issues such as safety in high-rise buildings?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we have been having this program called Ideas for Bengaluru. We have been inviting people from both offline and online media to submit ideas. So we got huge number of ideas, including on building safety, women's safety, water and all that. So look, I'm a problem-solving kind of guy. So I'm going to, when I get into this job, I'm going to treat that and see how we can fix many problems.
Okay, last two questions now as we end. One from Shakil Deshmukh and the other is a similar question, so I'll take them together. When did you first think and decide that you were going to join politics? And what is the one single reason that attracted Nandan to join the Congress? And the last question, Nandan Nilekani, please tell us, why should we vote for a failed leadership of the last 10 years? When did you first decide it was going to be politics?
About 6 to 8 months back.
And what did your family think of this decision?
Initially, a little
apprehensive, against it?
Yeah, but it took a while for Rohini to get used to the idea. But now she's my biggest campaign supporter. So, because obviously for people from our background, politics is not the natural path. And my kids, of course, are studying, so they were okay. They were neutral, I would say, to that. So 6 to 8 months back was when I took it. Till then, I was actually brushing aside any such speculation.
What would you have done had you not joined the Congress? What would you have done? Did you consider that?
No, I did that. I went for a 2-week trip to the US and I looked at all possible options. I went and I got offers from top universities to be a professor. I got offers from top think tanks to be with them. I got offers from people like the World Bank. I got offers to join a VC firm. So I looked at all possible options because I do everything in a systematic manner.
Okay.
And after all that, I came to the conclusion that the appropriate use of my time is contributing to making the lives of Indians better. And the only way I can get there is by being a politician.
So answer this question. Why should we vote for a failed leadership of the last 10 years? Would you acknowledge that there has been a leadership problem with the Congress, that there has been a leadership vacuum, and there has been a communication problem? The top leadership of the Congress has been silent for the most part.
I think I want people to vote for me because I intend to be a great ambassador and champion for Bengaluru. I intend to use my skills of problem solving and collaboration to bring better things for my voters. I believe all politics is local, and I think this message is getting across. I'm getting a very, very positive response from the people of Bengaluru.
Has your election...
And they are ready for change.
Has this election for you moved beyond caste and identity politics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I represent a kind of person who is bringing about change. People see me as someone who has accomplished things in another world or couple of worlds. and is coming with the right desire to make a difference. The other day I was in MTR, which is a very famous restaurant in Bangalore with my friend, and in Bangalore the very famous thing is buy two. Buy two coffee means you buy one coffee, 2 hours. I was having a buy two dosa and a buy two coffee with this guy. And the waiter came up to me, the guy who works there, and said, you know what, I heard you're getting into politics and I'm very happy. So I said, why? He said, look, I have 2 kids. One is in the 4th, one is in the 8th. And I know someone like you will help in creating opportunities for them. So it's very clear. People want politicians who will create opportunities for their children. And that's what I hope to do.
How will you counter the repeated shadow of corruption that follows the UPA? You've been on record saying the Lokpal is not a magic wand. You have Arvind Kejriwal saying this Lokpal is not even strong enough. You have the Lokpal maiden controversy in terms of the selection process now. So just a last question, how do you counter the repeated corruption shadows that are stalking you?
I think my anti-corruption credentials are impeccable because the Aadhaar platform with 600 million users and bank accounts attached to 60 million of them is the world's largest anti-corruption platform. I believe, and I've said this before, corruption is not going to be solved by having more laws. Corruption is not being solved by having more policemen or more ombudsmen. Corruption is solved by reducing monopolies, reducing discretion, and increasing accountability, which is what I know how to do. So I'm committed to bringing in systems that reduce monopoly, reduce discretion, improve accountability, and I'd like to bring them in every area, whether it's auctioning, whether it's procurement, whether it's public distribution. There's a systematic way to tackle corruption, and I hope to do that.
It's the beginning of a new innings. Good luck to you, and thank you for talking
to us.
Thank you,
Barka. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.